Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more turkey patterning, and today we've got a really interesting test to run. These shells are something a little bit unique. We've tried them before with some either really nice results or pretty disappointing results. There's not much wiggle room for in between because of how these shells are actually loaded, but today we're running them through two different chokes that are kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum from one another. We've done several tests with middle of the range chokes, but now we're on the other ends of the spectrum. I don't know what we're going to see. We may see one really good result and one really terrible result, or anywhere in between. It's going to be another case of we just got to try it and see what happens. But for the shells I've got today, I brought out some more of the Hevi-Shot Hevi-18 TSS turkey loads. These ones are the 410 3-inch 13/16 ounce payload of TSS 7-shot at about 1,090 feet per second. Now 7-shot TSS carries good energy for sure. However, when it's loaded into a 410 shell, that drastically drops your payload flying down range. Patterns are going to be much thinner, way fewer pellets within there, and although I get the point in why they made these, since there are some states, at least a few years ago anyway, I don't know if there still are, but there have been states that have a minimum shot size restriction that is like 7s or 8s or something like that for turkeys. That's where these shells come into play, although 9s are still a better option in my opinion when it comes to TSS and a 410. So pretty unique shell, a little bit limited on the payload or the pellet count anyway, and we'll see what they do through today's chokes because they are pretty much complete opposites of one another. As for the setup that we got to run them in, I brought out my Mossberg 500 410. It's got a Simmons red dot on top with a 24-inch barrel, but for our two chokes that we're going to be running, I brought out these two. Now immediately you can tell two different stories here for chokes. We've got the stock Mossberg extra full turkey choke and a regular old flush full choke. Definitely two ends of the spectrum for sure, but the stock extra full turkey choke is a 380 constriction, and this regular flush full choke is a 391. So kind of on opposite ends for constriction as well. A little bit tighter for a 410 and a little bit more open than a lot of your average 410 turkey chokes are. We've seen great results from those shells through 385-ish constriction chokes. Now we've got tighter and more open, so we'll see what happens. Both of these chokes have shown us a number of very nice, very capable 40-yard turkey patterns. So with them being a 7-shot, maybe they'll like this full choke a little bit more with it being 391. But maybe the extra full 380 might completely ruin our pattern and neither one of these perform well. I don't know what we're going to get exactly yet. But for today's test, we're running everything the same as usual. I've got both targets set up side by side at 40 yards and the chronograph to get our velocity. So let's get you guys to view those targets. We'll take both of our shots and see what we're actually able to get from the Hevi-18 7-shot through a much tighter extra full turkey choke versus a regular old flush, a little more open constriction full choke. Alright, so for our chronograph numbers real quick before we look at our target, we have a boss claim of 1,090, however we were just a little over the 1,100 mark, which has been pretty typical for these shells. Our stock extra full 380 turkey choke gave us 1137, and our regular flush 391 full choke gave us 1133. So bouncing right in the 1130 mark, that's perfectly fine for a TSS 7 at 40 yards, if we have the pattern capability to do it anyway. So let's head down there to 40 and see which of these chokes actually did a little better. Alright, so here we have our two 40-yard targets side by side. On the left, we have our 380 extra full choke, and on the right, we have our 391 flush full choke. Immediately, neither of these patterns is overly impressive for sure. These are absolutely nowhere near what we have seen from these shells with other chokes, and it definitely seems like that 385 roughly constriction is kind of the sweet spot here, where you choke your pattern down enough to get a nice, tight, even spread, but you're not blowing the pattern open either, because these chokes are kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum from each other. That's kind of what we saw here as well. The 380 extra full definitely blew the pattern out, and the 391 full doesn't quite look like it had enough constriction to really bring that pattern down some. But first, we'll move over to the left with our 380 extra full stock turkey choke. And yep, you can tell how just all over the place our spread is. We don't have a massive pellet count to work with, which we already knew coming into it with a 7-shot and a 410 shell. But we have seen tremendously better patterns compared to this. It absolutely was too much choke. It blew our spread open quite a bit. Technically, maybe we would still have a dead bird. There's one that's kind of right in the front edge of the brain and another that's down right in the neck in the middle there. That probably would have done the job, but that is borderline at best. Obviously, if you ran that pattern at 30 yards or so and in, it would work just fine. Pushing it to 40, not exactly the combo I would want to hunt with anyway. If I had to run these shells, there are far better options out there based on our testing anyway, as far as choke goes. We kind of might have a little bit of a hot spot of a core right out in front of that bird's neck there, but it's not really much of one, and immediately it just goes back to a big string there, another few little splotchy bits up there, and just kind of continuing to throw pellets a little bit all over the place. So not a pretty looking pattern for sure. Ultimately, it doesn't really surprise me too much. I kind of figured that 380 was going to be too much choke for these shells, so not overly surprising here as far as the stock extra full turkey choke goes. But now we have our 391 full choke, and it is definitely a better pattern for sure. Now, is it a good pattern? Is it an impressive pattern? Is it a combo that I would ideally want to hunt with to 40 yards? Still, no. It is still nowhere near as capable as what we have seen from these shells. But I think we're now going the other way, considering 385 has done a lot better in our testing. I don't think 391 is quite enough choke to bring them in that little bit more. You can definitely tell by the shape of the pattern kind of around the edges, it's much more circular-esque than what we got with the 380. So we're not over constricting anything yet. We just don't have enough to bring it in. Do we have a dead bird though? Yes, I do believe we do again, but it's pretty much the same story. One, maybe two in the center of the neck. Maybe you got something at the back edge of the head there, but not the ideal 40-yard combo for sure. 30 yards or so and in, yet again, an absolute hammer. 40, not so much, because we still have the little splotchy stringy bits around the edges. We're just not overly condensed down. So I was hoping that one of these two would be a very nice performer. I figured we had a better chance with the 391 full choke here than what we did with the 380, and it did give us a better pattern, but still not up there with what I thought our potential could be anyway. Still kind of seems like the Jeb's Extra Full, which is a 384 or 385 choke, is the way to go with these based on our testing. So let's pull both of our turkey targets down. I'll finish drawing circles and counting pellets. And although there's not going to be a ton to see here on the papers, at least we'll have an idea numbers wise, the exact difference on how these two actually performed. Okay, so now we have both of our turkey targets out of our way, and we can see exactly what's going on here now. It's about what I thought we were looking at earlier. Technically, the cores, numbers-wise on both, are almost identical. Looks-wise, that's a little different story, and the rest of the pattern outside of our 10-inch core is where the numbers really show the difference. So first we'll start with our 380 constriction extra full again. Inside of our 10-inch core, I did favor it where the hottest portion of our pattern actually was here. That gave us 49 total pellets. You can see a little bit of tightening to the core area there. So that does show that going to a little tighter constriction than what we had with our full choke can help bring it in, but this is too much constriction because immediately outside of that, within our 20-inch ring, we drop down to only 35 pellets. It gets very splotchy very quickly. Even though we do have a void at the bottom of our core for sure, it just continues. It gets even worse as we get farther out. And of course, we strung a bunch of stuff all around the edges here as well that we were looking at earlier. So even if we have a tiny bit of tightening in the core, the rest of the pattern just isn't there. So is it 40-yard capable with that kind of a core? Technically, yes, but it's not the pattern that I would ideally want to have, that's for sure. Just too much constriction. That's a perfect example on what happens when you have too much constriction. You may have a decent core, but it very quickly blows the rest of the pattern open, and that's exactly what we saw here. But now we have our 391 flush full choke. You can definitely see a little bit more even of a spread, a little more brought down, a little less all over the place than what we had with the 380. Inside of our 10-inch core, we have 48 pellets. It's definitely thinner, but it's only one less pellet than what we had with the 380 as well. So almost identical as far as the sheer pellet count goes in the 10-inch circle. However, outside of the 10-inch, you can absolutely see how much more full our 20-inch ring is. We now have 53 additional pellets within there compared to only 35 with the 380. And even around the edges, we do still have our little stuff around there. There's no doubt about that, but it's less of them and they're much more brought in and closer to our actual circles there. So this is still probably the better overall pattern. Having this little bit less constriction definitely helped us out some, although it didn't really gain us a ton of ground with these particular shells. I'm telling you, the 385 constriction range is just kind of the sweet spot for what we've seen from these. You have enough constriction to tighten your spread down into an actual really nice turkey pattern, but you're not tight enough to where you're blowing everything out like we did with the 380. So when it comes down to it, neither of these are something I would ideally want to run to 40 yards, but if I had to choose these shells and between these two chokes, I'd probably still go with this full choke here. A little bit better overall pattern throughout the entire thing. And if I have to limit my shots a little bit, I still would prefer to have a little more even spread. So definitely two interesting results here for sure. It's kind of what I thought we might see. I kind of figured the 380 would be a little too much choke and the full 391 may work out either very nicely or maybe not quite be enough choke, and that's kind of what we saw here. We know how limited the pellet count is with 7s in a 410 shell anyway, so we knew we weren't going to light the pattern board up necessarily speaking, but at least now we know. We've tried them through several different chokes, several different constrictions, and it seems like right down the middle with your classic 385 is kind of what you should be looking at with these shells. And here is one of the wads out of those shells. This particular wad came from the tighter 380 extra full. I did try and find the one from the regular full choke as well, but these wads are so small and light that they just kind of fly everywhere and they can be tricky to find sometimes. So I really wanted to see what that one looked like, but we only have this one unfortunately. Not a fancy wad design, but you can definitely tell we ran it through a tighter choke for sure. We're just on the edge of starting to get a little bit of pinhole damage up here at the top. Nothing major, nothing poked through or damaged anything or something like that, but it's a tighter choke for sure. Overall though, it pretty well looks exactly like I expected to see, and I'm willing to bet that the regular full choke would have had a little bit less of this ripply damage up here at the top. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about these two performances right here? Definitely nowhere near as capable as what we have seen these shells. These are on opposite ends from each other in constriction and in style as well. Flush choke versus extended choke, 391 versus 380. Definitely on either end of the spectrum for sure, but that's kind of what I wanted for today's test. We've ran them through chokes right in the middle of the range, 384, 385 constriction with nice results. We've ran them through a fixed full choke with a 395 constriction. It was way too open of a pattern. So I figured we'd go with these two, little tighter and a little bit more open, but not as open as our fixed full choke test was, and see what we got. And I think it went pretty predictably overall. Little too much choke over here, not quite enough over here, but if I had to choose, I'd probably still go with a little more even spread. The numbers in the core are almost identical on either one, and neither of these are really an option I'd ideally want to push to 40 yards or so, although these shells can definitely do that with the right choke and constriction. But out of these two, it's probably a 30 yard or so combination, and a TSS 7, regardless of what gauge of shell it comes from, is going to be packing some good energy at over 1100 feet per second, so you're going to have more than enough terminal performance to do the job at 30 yards. It's just going to come down to pattern performance, and we see what we got here overall. So leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Hevi-18, 410, TSS 7 shot loads? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Are either one of these an option you would actually run for a turkey hunt? Or would you much rather have them brought in a little more? Or would you rather just run a TSS 9 in general? Maybe not all states or areas allow you to do that, which is where these shells come into play, but it is a much much better choice. I think a lot of us would much rather run a 9 when it comes to a 410 anyway. But let me know all your thoughts about it down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, you have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it. But I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.